All right, so I want to take a minute to talk about some developments that have happened more recently here. As you guys have seen any of my videos, I talk a lot about and stitch with a lot of other videos about losing rights to digital media access, particularly with streaming. And then we had one thing up with Sony where Sony lost their contract or lost the contract with Discovery, and therefore, if you owned a PlayStation product and had purchased certain TV shows and movies, those particularly produced by Discovery and subsidiary brands, you lost that content. Even though you paid for it, you lost it. And no, I'm not making a mistake there. You can go look that up. If you paid actual money for digital content that you assumed you owned on your console, it was gone. You didn't get to have it anymore. They pulled it. No refunds were issued, nothing. And they were covered. Sony and Discovery were both covered by this because it was in the terms of their contracts. Now, this is an updated article. This is by IGN. I thought I got the tag in. I'm sorry, but you can go source the headline to IGN. Prior to this, people were freaking out because Sony/PlayStation was banning the resale of sharing of physical copies of PS5 games. Some articles read it was everything. And I don't know if there's a term for this or not. We're just going to call it EULA panic. And if you don't know what EULA is, that stands for End User License Agreement. You digitally signed an EULA in some shape or form or an end user contract anytime using anything digital. Whether you watch Netflix, whether you buy products from Amazon digitally, whatever it is, you sign an EULA, and from there you adhere to those rules. Now, the reason I'm saying EULA panic is because when people read a section of an end user license agreement, an EULA, and then they start writing blog posts and making tweets about it, it's because they have never read the EULA before and are not familiar with the terms that were probably already there. A lot of people had similar panic when Amazon pulled people's digital content just like Sony did. And I'm saying Sony because Sony essentially is PlayStation. And people panicked. They panicked because they weren't aware this could happen. Not a lot of people have the time to read through what I would consider minimum 30-page end user license agreement. They can be much longer, and most times they are, but you should understand what you're getting into an agreement with and why you should be keeping physical media. And this is a whole thing of it. Now, questions came up. I'm gonna talk about the hypotheticals for a moment. I don't want to make this video too long, but I want to get into some of the hypotheticals people brought up, which was, how would Sony enforce this? Now, some argued there'd be no way for them to on PS4, PS3 discs, PS2, PS1. Now, I would say the PS1, PS2, they would not be able to enforce that beyond a measure for all, and I'll get to that in a second. But PS3, PS4, and PS5 have digital copies that they could track down, which means the discs could potentially have some sort of rights management that allow them to do this. I don't think it's out of their own possibility. PS5, I don't think it's out of the question at all. I think they could track down who owns what disc, and if they saw another console running the same disc, that could potentially be an issue. They'd lock it down. More so, I think the bigger issue would have been they would have nuked the ability to resell games on major marketplaces. That means your Amazons, your eBay, stuff like that. They would have completely nuked it from orbit, the way that the verified rights owner program works. And the only way to kind of get around that is if somebody were to sue Sony/PlayStation, because you have I forget what it's called, you have the right of second sale or something like that. I forget exactly what it's called, but you have the right to resell property you own if it's used. You cannot sell it as new. Even if you have it in new condition, you still kind of lose some of that right in some places. But I do resell for a living, so I'm highly aware of how this works. So if I buy an item at a thrift store and it's brand new, I have to sell it as open box or used. That's usually why you see stuff listed as open box on marketplaces, because if you put it as new, you get Vero. Vero is a verified rights owner program. And basically, I've had this happen with Microsoft products. I go to sell a Microsoft product as new, even though it's new in the box. Microsoft pops me with a Vero strike saying that I'm selling a product new and it doesn't represent them. And really, even the Vero stuff is awful, and the laws need to change around that. But anyway, I think that's more so what Sony was getting at, was they were going to stop the resale of a lot of their physical titles as even used, which that would have been an uphill battle for them. Do they have it in their EULA? Yeah, they always have. And as this article on IGN points out, somebody saw this back, I think, as far as PS2 games. So it's not like it was something that wasn't there. They're writing these contracts well in advance before most consumers even know what's going on. And one thing I don't like as of recent is a lot of people, in my generation and younger, are like, oh, what's it matter? It's always going to be there. And as a YouTuber some ordinary gamers pointed out, they won't. They won't always be there. Content gets pulled all the time, especially digitally only platforms such as Steam. Steam delists games that are perfectly fine and operational because the publisher or Steam at its discretion has determined they don't want it up anymore. And that's a problem because it will be gone. And that means there are people who will not get to experience things. So what happens, and we've already had this there, but what happens when there's a movie from the 70s, 80s, or 90s that is well-known, highly popular, and the copies become unavailable? Somebody talked about Cocoon not too long ago, and I forget where I heard about it at, but the movie Cocoon sorry, is only available on VHS. As far as I know, there's a limited DVD release, but that's not even widely available anymore. So if you want to watch that movie, how do you view it? If streaming isn't going to carry it because they don't have the rights, and there's multiple directors who have decided not to have their content on streaming services because they have that right, where are you supposed to see it at? And at what point do we start to realize that piracy is not piracy if it's not available anywhere? I cannot verify for certain. I'd have to look into this more in depth, but way back, there was a rumor spiraling around that if you could not find a physical copy, if you could not find a digital copy, the company would have no right to say that they were losing profit on a product they can't sell, won't sell, and aren't selling. So whether that holds water or not, I don't know. I would love to have a legal person weigh in on that. But yeah, these are becoming issues. For this generation of gaming, I do have a fear of that. Most games I want to play, I have to buy digital only. There's not physical for anymore. There are a lot of physical copies of games out, but once they get a patch or an update, the physical copy becomes useless. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that either. So anyway, to keep this video from getting too long, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Are you aware of this? Were you affected by the Discovery contract falling apart? And did you believe or fear that you would not be able to resell or buy used PlayStation games? By the way, I should note that Xbox has a similar line on the EULA, except people don't seem to throw as big a fit about it when Microsoft does it. I don't know why that is, but are there any other platforms or digital media items that you've purchased that are now gone, that's not being publicized, that you have a complaint about? Maybe I can use this platform to talk about that more and get it out to other people who can make comment on it. So again, what are your thoughts, guys?